Hello everyone, this is CounterYolo, coming back after a bit of a hiatus, giving you another video on Star Trek Online. And there were some announcements over the last couple of weeks. I didn't feel they were noteworthy enough for a video, but this recent change about the Romulan Republic starships definitely warrant a video, especially with a lot of the very polarizing views about this change. Some people really love it, and some people really hate it. So I'm going to be talking a bit about it in this video, about those big news that happened and a couple of other ones that have notably happened in the past couple of weeks, how that implication kind of ties into the change when Victory's Life came out last summer, some more comments from the community, and I'll go over my personal rankings for the factions currently as they stand today. And there'll also be a TLDW at the end of the video. Feel free to see the time links in this video. I'm not sure how long this is going to be. Hopefully my rants and positivity and negativity around this will be kept to a minimum, and I'll hopefully kind of put myself in the middle. Feel free to let me know in the comments of how well that I do in this video. So first off, as a general thank you to you all, my last video was the Away Team Status Made Easy video, and I didn't expect it to do as well as it did. This is my first video that I've ever had on this channel that went above 2,000 views and 100 likes without a single dislike. Generally, when I look at videos, I'm generally looking at like a 5 to 10% dislike ratio on videos that are actually relatively getting spread around and people are actually clicking on to watch. Otherwise, in most circumstances, it just means that it's a video that's doing well, but it's only staying within the general community that seems to like my channel, besides the general Star Trek Online community, which is totally fine. This happened to be a weird one that actually broke barriers, and everyone who watched the video seemed to like it. YouTube has like never been like this. I'm not sure if it's because the community that's watching this channel or is Star Trek Online and stuff is getting better, or if it was just that particular theme of that video itself was really good. I'm not sure. These are stats that I pulled just a couple hours ago. I'm sure some of you that are watching this video might hate it so much that you might go over to that video and put dislikes just to spite me on this, which, no, it's totally fine. This topic today is extremely controversial. There's no way that we are avoiding the dislikes and the hate in the comments below. There's just no way around it. It's going to be there. So yeah, and you're welcome to your own viewpoints on it. Obviously, as my name is CounterYolo for gaming standpoint, that's obviously something that I need to talk about. So there are some big news with our next season called Awakening. There's going to be a big patrol system update that will be tied into earning the Tier 6 Alachi Starship. You can play the patrols, or you can play the TFO mission. They'll be alongside the thing as well. Like a day and a half ago, it was announced that there's going to be a new map for the DPS parser inside the game that'll actually be built into the game. It was starting out only on Turbo for the PC version. They want to expand this out to the general game, but there's a lot of quirks that they need to work through first before they do so. Obviously, on console, if things are buggy, it takes a long time for a patch to come through. They want this to be in a very solid, workable form first, and the DPS team is a bit stronger on PC because there have been a lot of parsers available in the past for the PC game to have things in the game for it. When this gets worked out, eventually, their plans is to jump into life. It's just they have no great timetable to be able to do so. It might be a year, it might be 5 years if this game is around that long. We will see. The bigger controversial stuff deals with this announcement right here. The non-Romulan Republic captains can now fly Romulan Republic starships. There's been a lot of clamor on this, a lot of positive and a lot of negative. There doesn't seem, there are some people that are kind of in the middle. Most of the comments, as is normal for a lot of this, is on the very ends of the spectrum. A lot of the negativity seemed to be around Twitter and Facebook, while a lot of the more positive stuff seemed to be on STO Reddit. Perhaps that's because a lot of people on Facebook and Twitter fly Romulan captains or use Romulan captains. I'm not fully sure on that. I don't have the data to be able to know that for sure. There's definitely a lot of things going around that. And there's a couple of comments here from Facebook just showing you just a handful and a taste as to some of the things going on out there right now. And as for my initial perspective on this, when I initially heard that this announcement was, well, I mean, in the general player base, most people that play are Federation captains. It's just the way that this game works. And so the Federation stuff sells. Everything else, if it's a super big hit, maybe it'll sell. But I mean, this is just a 5-year anniversary stats. The 9-year anniversary stats didn't show the faction numbers. I wish it did. I wish that it showed the racial breakdown as well, but they didn't. Hopefully they do for the 10th anniversary this January. I guess we'll see in a few months. But that's just my opinion. Is Cryptic wants to make more money off of the Romulan Starships. Essentially, they want the Romulan Starships to be in a high enough demand and actually be able to use them by a lot of their player base, so that they actually sell more starships. Which, I mean, from a business standpoint, especially since our current EP in the game is very much about money and trying to optimize money management inside of their game, it makes sense that he's moving towards this so that it's okay to make more Romulan starships. It's also why that recent Romulan starship that was released was able to all captains. They're seeing the reception on that, and at least from what we can tell, it sold at least decently enough that they're okay moving forward with this decision here. Now for this slide, because I know that some of you are a little confused about what ships were added and what ships weren't, and so I combined both posts. The post from last summer about the starships the Romulans couldn't fly even though they were allied to their Federation or Klingon counterparts, combined with the one in this post of the Romulan starships that you still can't fly even though you should be able to fly basically every Romulan starship in the game. And as you can see here in these general categories, they basically just added the Romulan ships in to the starships that were already excluded from the Romulans during last summer. That's all that this was. You have the veteran starships that are available to lifetime subscribers. I have question marks here just because we don't have the Gemini Vanguard veteran destroyers and the Gemini Vanguard shuttle. Those have not been added to the game yet, and that's why Gemini Vanguard captains can't access these ships right now, because they're supposed to have one. And the rumor is that they will have one by the anniversary in January, if not a little bit sooner than that. The rest of these were around prior to Victory's life, so they don't have a Gemini equivalent. We have some temporal science vessels, temporal destroyers, Dyson science destroyers. These ones are just the low-I version. The C-Store versions are available cross-faction. It's just that the specific low-I version is only available to each individual faction, so that they have their own version. You only really buy it for the deflector if you're going for the full 4-piece console set from the Dyson Science Destroyer Tier 5 set. It's actually why the Dyson Science Destroyers have actually sold extremely well and are one of the best low-buy starships for the past couple of years in Star Trek Online. They'd sell even better than the Vengeance class actually did, which is kind of surprising, to be honest. The big thing, though, is that, at least from a unique perspective, the ones to look at here are these 4 general groups of starships. We have our TOS starship group from Lockbox and Low-Buy Store. This is the set where the DPRM console and point defense bombardment warhead comes from. It's a very, very potent console set. Each faction gets access to 2 of the consoles for really, really cheap. The Annex 1 comes from the C-Store in one fashion or another, or from the exchange, but it's still going to be generally expensive in some fashion. DPRM is really cheap for non-Federation captains. So there is definitely that. For TOS starships, the Tillis is a very balanced starship from promo packs. And then the Connie and D7 are so iconic that they're always going to sell. They'll always be at a high price forever. The 29th century Dreadnought carriers, they're technically not called Dreadnought carriers, but they have 8 weapons. They've got 2 hangar bays. All of them have access to dual cannons and dual heavy cannons and a spinal lance. They're essentially Dreadnought carriers. The Romulan version technically doesn't have cruiser commands, but it does have a battle cloak. So it's basically the only it's the only battle cloak 8 weapon carrier in the game with a spinal lance, which is fun. The Kelvin Timeline one starships, in my opinion, is kind of like the starship pack that I wish would be added to the C store at some point in the future, especially with more and more pushing towards captains being able to fly just about all of the options presented in C store packs. Come on, just let us have each ship be a little different and have a different flavor behind them. Like, each one of these ships are a different class or a subclass. The Kelvin Constitution is a standard cruiser. The Kelvin Timeline Klingon ship is a pilot bird of prey. The Romulan ship is a science carrier. That is a 4-2 science carrier, which is really nice. And then the Lobi starship is the Vengeance class. Or if you look at it inside of the registry inside the game, it's the Kelvin Timeline Intel Dreadnought Cruiser. This is single-handedly one of the best reasons why you want to play Federation, frankly, because this is not available to Romulan allies to fly this particular ship, and it is one of the better ships inside the game. There's also randomly the Command Assault Cruiser, both the one for code through the C stores or in reclaimable through the C store / the fleet version is not available to Romulan allies. It is kind of weird. Not sure why that's the case, but that's the way it is right now inside the game. So you don't really lose a ton by not having access to that, but because there is the Enterprise F from the C store that's better in most ways to the Enterprise E, but totally your choice in the matter. There's the breakdown. Feel free to do a screenshot or look at the PDF for the slides after watching this video. Generally, if it doesn't matter to you, basically, if it's a starship that you're looking at for the Romulan Republic that's from the C store or from the fleet, it's guaranteed to be available on your Klingon or Dominion or General Captain inside the game. It doesn't really matter. In my opinion, the 3 starships to look out for is the Scimitars, the Romulan Miracle Worker Warbirds, since these ones do have access to dual heavy cannons and dual cannons. The Klingon and Federation versions do not have access to dual cannons and dual heavy cannons, while this one actually does. So that is a nice pro for those. And also the Romulan Multi-Mission Explorer Warbirds are also pretty potent and strong science vessels as well. Pretty sturdy. They've got a hangar bay. Its setup is also pretty nice too. And they also have a battle cloak as well, which is really, really rare for science vessels inside this game. And in most circumstances, many captains are basically treated as their ally faction, with the exception of a few traits and consoles in the game, which are transferred to polearm damage instead of phaser or disruptor damage. And they have veteran destroyers that will be upcoming as well. That'll be unique for them as well. Besides that, they're basically just a level 60 version of a Federation or Klingon captain. And in this video, I'll be going over, when I'm talking about the different factions, I'm going over basically the basically the 6 factions in the game. I will be treating these 3 as basically the same faction, but I will also give my little biased rankings as to which one of these is actually the best of the Federation versions that you can choose, because there actually are some nuanced differences between them. Before I get into that, I will go over some comments on ST Reddit of ones that I think are noteworthy enough to put in this video. There obviously are a lot more on the ST Reddit forums. There are several posts circulating already on this, the official one based upon the initial post about this, plus there are other people with their own thoughts on it. Feel free to see those, at least for the next probably week or two. It's going to be probably one of the hottest topics on there, unless they have some other extreme announcement that they released in the next week or so. This is going to probably be the top topic for a while. First off, as was noted by this Redditor, Romulan ships are basically going to be the generic ship you're going to want for any particular trait or console off of the C store. Essentially, if there's a Federation, Klingon, and Romulan ship that all give you the same trait and console, since Romulan ships are available to everyone, while Federation and Klingon ships aren't, depending upon your legions or what faction you choose, one of the ships is not going to be available to all characters. Buying the Romulan ship from the C store in some fashion, it's going to be the cheapest route to go going forward. Especially in my video when I talked about the best valued stuff for using your voucher. Picking a Romulan ship now is going to be one of the best options if you're going for a trait or console that a Romulan ship you can get it from a Romulan ship. So yeah, there's definitely that. For more comments, as what was said earlier, Romulan players seem to be more toxic on Facebook and Twitter, but for most players, especially ones that are Federation only, it could be an extreme benefit. And obviously some people who post on Reddit are like, it's either neutral or positive for a lot of players, and that's the way it generally should be. Then of course there's a lot of stuff that's basically getting downvoted into oblivion that I think is okay. I don't fully understand the S2 Reddit culture as to why certain things get downvoted into oblivion and why certain things don't. I'm not sure if it's fully just because of the person who's writing the stuff as to why they get downvoted or not, or whether it's because of the actual content itself is not, I guess, uplifting and adding to the actual discussion enough, I guess. Technically on the Reddit forums, it should be that you're only downvoted if your post or if your comment to the post is not adding to the discussion. If it's adding to the discussion, even if you don't like it, you shouldn't downvote it. That's in the actual official subreddit rule, the actual official Reddit rules, not even Star Trek Online Reddit, but general Reddit rules. But most people just upvote if they like and downvote if they dislike, like on most other platforms out there. It's kind of weird, but that's what is there for Reddit. Again, there's more people that are mixed on it. Some people like it, some people don't. Some people have more wishful thinking on what current implications that this means for the game going forward. And of course, people are going to continue to complain about it. There's really just no way around it. And you know what? In some ways, I think that's okay. You know, if a game does something that's potentially controversial and no one talks about it, that's actually probably worse in many ways for your game, because if people don't talk about your announcements, that means they don't care about the game, which is not a good thing, by the way. Basically, people commenting means that they actually are still relatively passionate about a game, which is why for videos like on YouTube, a lot of good indicators is how many people are actually commenting and liking or disliking on your video versus the amount of views that you're getting versus how many minutes of watch time you're actually getting on a video. People are willing to engage and give comments, do likes or dislikes. It means they're actually engaging with the content in some fashion instead of just blindly listening to it and moving on. And that's how sometimes things get recommended, alongside of course just sharing videos themselves. As for my personal perspective, right now I actually command 22 different characters across my 2 accounts. I've got 11 on each account. One of my accounts I have the lifetime subscription, and on one of them I don't. It's so that it can remind me what stuff's available to lifetime people and what stuff is not. It helps remind me that constantly, so that as I talk with newer players, I don't accidentally get put in a trap of oh, well, this uniform looks really cool, and then I'm like, oh, right. Only lifetime players get access to that particular uniform. Having a second account that's not lifetime allows me to be able to help guide newer players as to, okay, here's some cool cheap stuff that you can get with X, Y, or Z character. In terms of all this going on, and of course my 3 mains are all Romulan Republic captains, by the way. I've got a Federation engineer that's a Romulan that she flies as the Suban Silk. I've got a tactical main that's a Klingon aligned that flies the Scimitar. Well, I guess tier 6. I keep on switching between the engineering and science version of the tier 6 Scimitar. I'm still not fully sold on which one I'm going to keep. It's going to be one of those two, though. And then I've got a science Romulan aligned with the Federation that is using a Romulan multi-mission explorer warbird for her tank. All of them have Romulan battle cloaks, and that is their theme around them now. Some of them used to fight different starships, but especially since I've moved a lot more towards sea store or fleet starships only, unless they have a specific theme around them. Like, for instance, 2 of my characters are Voth themed, so I have a tier 6 Voth Rampart and a tier 6 Voth Bastille that I use for energy tanking and science tanking respectively, and the energy tank uses all Voth anti-proton weapons because that's what Voth ships use. And I have a Voth 4-piece space set for both of them because they're Voth themed. No, not all my captains are optimized because they have specific themes around them. Whether it's Voth, whether it's temporal, TOS, whatever it is, they all have some sort of theme around them. For this actual change itself, it's not going to affect me too much, honestly. Most of my characters already have the starship that they're going to use. Maybe I switch out one of my starships that I have on one of my characters to maybe put in the the America Worker, to put in a America Worker warbird in there. But that would just be for some extra fun flavor. I'm not sure if I will. I'm still undecided on that. I'll have to try some stuff out and see how I personally feel about it. Now, for you all, is it okay to be upset about this? Yeah, of course it is. Factions are a lot less distinct now. It's a lot more cosmetic, especially for ground stuff in the game. Space stuff, from an outside perspective, is going to look about the same for most of our factions inside the game now. And as alluded to in the temporal storyline, which we get to go into the future and see some of the temporal accords going on, eventually everyone is the same faction anyway and using the exact same starships. So maybe for Star Trek Online's timeline, that starts to happen much sooner, which is definitely possible. Now, is it okay to be excited as well? Of course. You have some cheaper cross-faction traits and consoles available now. You have a lot more. We have an insane amount of Admiralty cards available to all factions now, not just Romulan Republic, getting an advantage to have the most inside the game. And especially because a lot of people want to fly a America Worker Juggernaut, but can't afford that billing credit price or that billing credit price for all their characters. Everyone can fly a Scimitar now, which is a slight downgrade from it, but it's still pretty close, and it's in the same general ballpark in terms of its playstyle. Really slow moving, but commander tactical, and it's got a really strong console set with the flagship set, honestly, which is one of the best inside the game. Now, for the actual content of this video of ranking the factions, keep in mind I'm going to be going with this as a top 6. Technically, you could have the other 2 subvariants of Starfleet / Federation be their own separate faction as well. I am dividing this by the factions, like as it's each different faction has some sort of variation in terms of starships that are accessible to them. When it comes to Dominion captains, in most circumstances they are literally just a Federation or a Klingon captain, except for the fact that eventually they will have veteran destroyers that are exclusive to them, as well as their own veteran shuttle. Right now, they're literally just a Starfleet or Klingon captain that just starts level 60, but in the future, they won't be. So I'm counting them as separate factions. With Romulan Republic, that should be pretty obvious. They have some starships exclusive to them. plus depending upon which way you ally, you've got a whole group of extra starships available to them as well. Bottoming out the list is the Federation Line Dominion. True, they are a Federation captain that starts at level 60. There is that nice enhancement that they'll be coming to them soon, in that they'll be able to use the Federation styled uniforms in the near future. I'm not sure if that has gone into effect yet, but if it hasn't, it will soon. Plus, there's like a specific trading console, potentially more in the future, that makes them a bit more advantageous on Polaron builds, especially if you wanted to use Piezo Polarons to be a beam tank inside the game. That makes them a little bit better in that niche circumstance. Better with the shoot for exact poisonous later mentality, like a lot of missions seem to be in this game. Really, the big downsides for this race is that they aren't as good as KDF aligned Dominion for dilithium farming, so that's a bit unfortunate. Additionally, their Federation Dominion uniform is pretty lackluster, and because of the negative feedback around that particular uniform, in fact that the KDF one is so awesome in comparison, in my personal opinion, is why Jem'Hadar are getting access to the Federation uniforms in the first place. It's because of that problem. Most Jem'Hadar captains don't use the Federation uniform at all, or the Federation Dominion Alliance uniform. Also, there's a lot more Jem'Hadar within Federation fleets that like to be able to roleplay and be able to use the Federation uniform. Uniforms are used a bit more with Federation fleets than KDF fleets, frankly. It's just kind of the way it is. Now, when it comes to the Federation, I'm putting them at number 5. It's not that they are bad. It's just that with some of the nuances in the game right now, it's almost like, why pick Federation when you can pick a Federation aligned Romulan? That's what it comes down to. I mean, sure, if there are a few exclusive Federation starships, especially most of it with the Vengeance class, that does not have an equivalent for Romulan captains. And also, I mean, generally for Federation, they have some of the best cruisers and science vessels inside the game that aren't accessible to other factions inside the game. They do have the best tutorial overall inside the game, especially with the graphics aspects of it. It is the newest tutorial in the game, so that's kind of to be expected. They also have very few species, but they still have the alien species, like most of the other factions in the game. So you can still do a ton of customization with them. Downsides, though, is because of how good the graphics are with this tutorial in this particular faction, most of STO's graphics look pretty lackluster in comparison. It's when I've talked with some players that initially started and then left, this was part of the reason why. It was because they were like, I started with this and the graphics were initially, bearable, and then the rest of the missions were kind of pretty terrible in comparison, and so they left the game. There's also the problem that the Discovery missions actually occur, once you get to modern Star Trek Online, they occur after Victory's life. And so realizing that it's after Victory's life and that you're not oriented on the other stuff, and so your actual playthroughs of the other missions actually are kind of like simulations instead of actual playing through those levels. It's kind of, it is a bit jarring when you realize that. But a lot of people that do Discovery Starfleet and actually stick through it all are ones that actually are veterans of the game anyway, and so that doesn't affect everyone, but it is definitely present. Now, the standard Starfleet, in my opinion, is just a smidge better. I mean, the tutorial is more fun. I mean, sure, the Discovery one is basically just this tutorial, but with a different skin and better cutscenes. I mean, come on, in the original Federation tutorial, you fight against the Klingons and the Borg. And the Borg, at least in the space part, is actually pretty menacing, especially whenever you see that tactical cube. It's a bit of a fun battle, and you can actually die. Unfortunately, they modified that tutorial so that fighting against the cube is shorter, it has less HP, can't hurt you as hard, and also what changes to bridge officer stuff. Bridge officers actually fire faster. It was one of the changes with bridge officers that they made with the skill revamp. The only thing that I missed about the old one was basically fighting that particular cube, but Anyway, the big downsides with 24/9 Federation is there's some interesting board technology referenced in the tutorial that isn't used ever again. Sure, that's a partial call to Khitomer at stasis, or Khitomer in stasis, and that you have future board going into the past to basically that moment, and that also outside of an early Federation mission, the Undine aspect of why the Federation Klingon War even started is basically goes completely unnoted inside the game entirely. Most missions involving the Undine at all have been removed from the game. There's only one mission in which you're escorting a Vulcan ambassador, in which that's still present, but outside of that mission, you don't really see the Undine infiltration aspect inside the game anymore, which is pretty sad, honestly. This captain should be the most involved with the modern Federation Klingon War, and so not being able to see that in a lot of those missions that you should be seeing right off the bat is really sad. Now, when it comes to raw logistics in terms of stuff that makes sense story-wise, the TOS Federation is just the best, especially because a lot of the missions don't connect with one another, especially in the story. Because with this captain, you are a temporal agent, so you're meant to jump around the time stream. So it makes sense that the story might be a bit jumbled for you because, well, you're jumping around the time stream. It's okay that it doesn't make sense to you because, well, you haven't fully acclimated to how being a temporal agent works, maybe, so it's totally fine. They also are the only Federation captain with some extra missions that no one else can access inside the game. So in essence, if you're going to use one Federation captain and play all of the Federation missions, this is the one to pick. Also, in terms of the tutorial, they are the only captain that has a promotion that actually makes sense inside the game. It's not like this weird, like that you're randomly promoted to captain. This is one where you've been serving with a certain captain for a while. Your tutorial is basically the last mission in which that captain is a captain before he gets promoted to admiral. And then your previous captain, now admiral, decides that you, as the old first officer, should be promoted to captain because of how good you've helped the ship. And I think that is totally understandable, and that makes a lot more sense than most other tutorials inside of this game. So, for me, that's the best thing about this faction in general. The only downside is that they have very few species to choose from, and they're the only faction without an alien option or an option that's really, really strong for space and ground like an alien is. At least for Gemini captains, you could pay to get Gemini Vanguards, at least give you a pretty decent bonus for damage in space. The best that you get for space options for TOS Federation is to pick the human species, which gives you a bit of extra whole region and subsystem offline resistance space, and that's it. The other three options are ground only species inside the game. For number 4, it's going to be the KDF aligned Dominion. These are the better Dominion, in my personal opinion. They have a super awesome uniform that they get to wear, and I think it just makes them look super awesome. Goes along with their mentality of, let's just shoot first and ask questions later. If our founder tells us to shoot this person, we'll shoot this person. They're also the canon option for the Dominion storyline. When I eventually cover the SGO lore, I'll get into why. And they're a very strong lithium grind character because since you start at level 60, you basically get immediate access to the Admiralty system after the tutorial. You also get access to a lot of the easy contraband duty officer options as well. The real KDF is slightly stronger for true free-to-play players that don't have a lot of C-Store starships available to them. But if you're someone who has a lot of C-Store starships and have slots available to do dilithium grinding, and even don't want to deal with the actual contraband system, you can still start a lot of Dominion captains and have them claim a lot of those ships from the C-Store and do the Admiralty system at least for some dilithium. And it doesn't take that long for you to set those up for those characters. Yeah, it's a pretty decent option overall. In my opinion, the Klingon Empire is just a little bit stronger. But it is really, really close because of the free-to-play aspect for Klingon Empire being available. They are the best in dilithium generation. They also have a super, super strong science officer available from the dilithium store. There's a from your faction requisition officer on Kronos First City. There is a female science officer available there for like about 200 dilithium, in which you can get that alien science officer, and she has creative and telekinetic, which are some of the strongest science abilities or science traits available in the game. So that's super, super nice there. Also, you got a large race selection available. Most people choose Klingons, Gorn, or Orion females. Gorn and Orion females because you can basically choose to have almost no clothing on, and that's a technical option. Almost no clothing because of the TOS Gorn. If you go back to that classic episode of that Gorn captain fighting Kirk, the Gorn captain doesn't have a lot of clothes on, frankly. It's mainly just a loincloth, and that's about it. And then Orion females normally don't have much on, period, besides their skimpy underwear in general. So a lot of people like that. I honestly like the really, really cool Honor Guard stuff that's available to the Gorn. Their helmet actually looks cool. The other helmet for KDF kind of looks gimpy in comparison, but the Gorn one looks a lot cooler. The Klingon Empire has the best access to battle cloaking starships. That's available for basically anyone who's allied to them. They have some nice bird of praise, which basically just raiders that have a battle cloak with them. They also have a version of the Fleet Shepherd, except it's even more discoified than our Shepherd version is, and it also has a battle cloak. Then of course there's also the classic D7s that are promo ships from your promo packs or the exchange for about 1 billion credits each. The classic TOS version, or you can go for the Discovery version that has 2 hangar bays. It does have the smallest player base, and to explain the Star Trek Online lore with them is actually some of the most complicated, frankly. There's a lot of nuanced stuff going on prior to Star Trek Online, dealing with the Klingon Defense Force and why they have certain races and civilizations in the Klingon Empire. Technically, there's 2 different Klingon empires. Eventually, when I talk about the Star Trek Online lore, I'll cover the differences between the 2. And then actually in the missions themselves, it gets complicated. Because even in the tutorial, technically you're playing as 2 different captains. Yeah, it's... Thank you, Feclari Arc, for making things complicated. But yeah, the Feclari Arc is still one of my favorite arcs in the entire game. I wish the graphics were better for it and that there was less bugs. Namely, whenever you're in Grethor, that enemies don't just jump to their somewhat deaths, except their jumping to their deaths doesn't count for a death, so you have to restart the mission. There are some bugs with the Feclari arc, but it is an awesome arc for the Klingon Empire. This was originally designed as a PvP faction, but there's a lot of things that are Federation exclusive that they can't access, and there's a lot of Romulan starships that are just better than what they have. Fortunately, now many of those Romulan starships are also available to them now, so that's very nice. Still, there are a handful of Romulan starships that they can't access that Romulans can, and so most notably the Talisk Temporal Warbird. But I mean, at this point, KDF Romulan Republic is probably the best cloaking option inside the game, which makes them one of the most oppressive PvP factions available inside the game. You have so many awesome officers to help enhance and extend the bonus that you get from decloaking, which is really, really nice, plus making your cloaking more effective. They are also the canon option for the Romulan storyline. If I eventually cover the lore, I will get into why. Because you get access to most of the KDF cloaking ships, plus you have a lot of your ships, because most of your ships have cloaks as well. Most of your strongest ships are cross-faction now, besides the Tallest Warbird, which we have a recent Temporal Warbird, which is very, very similar in stats and capability to the Tallest Temporal Warbird. There's best less ground barbarian options for this particular faction of Romulan Republic, and Honor Debt isn't cheap for them. They have to buy the sarcophagus just like regular KDF ships. KDF captains have to as well from the exchange to get that. So it's a bit less advantageous for tanking or cheap survival in the game. They still get access to the DPRM though, really cheap, so there is that at least. Number one though, it's really hard to argue that this isn't the best one in the game. You still have access to full Spear Ramen Operative for all of your bridge officer slots. You can switch them out with some Gemini Vanguard bridge officers if you feel that's a little bit better. Especially for PvE, this is going to be the way to go, frankly. You get the DPRM console really cheap from the exchange. You also get Honor Dead from the exchange really cheap. You still get to experience the best story in the game, and because you have access to a lot of the well-rounded Federation starships, you can play virtually any playstyle in the game with a Federation aligned Romulan Republic captain. You want to play a cruiser and go tank? You're more than welcome to. You want to go science? There's a ton of science options available. There's also a few Romulan versions that have a battle cloak that you can still use the battle cloak aspect of Romulan captains in a science starship. Then of course for DPS, you can always lean back into your own, or you can use like the Starfleet's Fleet Shepherds that are Miracle Worker battle cruisers that are really strong too. It's totally up to you. They have so many great options available to them. They unfortunately don't have as many cloaking starships with the Federation as they would with the Klingon Empire, just kind of the way it is. Also, some of the Federation exclusive bridge officers from the Sea Store and conventions are not available to be reclaimed by these captains. It's just the way that it is in the game. You can't claim 0718 with the Romulan Republic. You can with Federation, and you can with Dominion captains, because as I said, Dominion captains are basically their allies' faction, with the exception of the veterans starships. And again, like the last Romulan Republic faction, the recent Temporal Warbird is really similar to the Tallest Warbird. Okay, so for TLDW on this video, it was just announced that we're getting one of our old maps back to be a DPS parser. It's initially going to be available on the Turbo server for PC, but at an undisclosed, undetermined time in the future, they plan on adding it to the general game on Xbox, PlayStation, and on PC as well. The patrol systems is going to be getting an update with Star Trek Awakening. The patrols, from my understanding, is basically going to be their version. The updated patrols are going to be an updated version of the exploration system and the Foundry kind of the closest thing that they'll have to a Foundry replacement inside of the game in the near future. Select patrols are going to be accessible without needing to fly to the planet. There's going to be a patrol system like UI in that same tab you would click to get to the TFOs inside of the game. Basically, for the difference between patrols and TFOs and why you would choose each one over the other, patrols are the best for leveling Starship Mastery and for testing builds that you aren't sure if they're going to work or not in a TFO. TFOs are still going to be the best route for gathering reputation marks. So, depending upon what you want to do, depends upon what system you're going to be going for. This also should ideally mean that we'll have less parsing on infected the conduit. Hopefully that's the case, and people start to figure out what's the best thing here on our new DPS parser map for PC. I would love to play some of the other TFOs without having a super high DPS person doing almost 1 million damage per second, just blowing everything up so that I can't tank for him. Anyway, Romulan Republic starships are also available to basically to all captains now, besides a select amount that I showed earlier in this video. With this change, Federation captains now are the faction with the most potential amount of starships available to them. However, it is very, very close between Federation captains, Klingon captains, and Romulan captains, as well as Dominion captains that are basically just Federation or Klingon captains. With this change, I expect to see a lot of Tier 6 scimitars. Tier 6 Mirror Worker Warbirds, and Tier 6 Multi-Mission Explorer Warbirds, the science version, flying around a lot more inside the game. They're some of the strongest endgame capable Romulan Republic Starships available from the C-Store, which means a lot of those are going to be highly bought inside the game. There'll be some other bigger implications for this as well that I might cover in a different video. Here's the TLW for the different factions and my general reasons for picking those. Feel free to see that section of the video if you want a more in-depth discussion on those different elements themselves. But TLW for all this in general for this video, factions matter a bit less than they have before, especially in the space realm. Most of your faction choices are going to be more of visual things dealing with your captain and your bridge officers, which mainly deals with ground stuff in the game, which there isn't necessarily as much interest in ground as there is in space. So if you're someone who only cares about space combat in this game, factions are much less important than they were before. Here's some general things from my personal viewpoint in terms of the factions that I've covered before on this channel. But yeah, in general, if there's a 3 starship pack with a Federation, Klingon, and Romulan starship in there that gives the exact same trait and console, and you're interested in that trait, just buy the Romulan ship. Just buy the Romulan ship instead of trying to buy all 3. It's going to be a lot cheaper for you overall. Anyway, hopefully you all enjoyed this video. Feel free to like and subscribe if you do. Feel free to also click the bell icon as well so you get notifications on stuff on this channel. There's a good chance that I'll be posting less videos than I used to do in the past. I do have a lot of real life stuff going on right now. That's why I was away for 2 weeks before posting a video. I do have a lot of stuff going on right now, so because of how infrequent it's probably going to be going forward, the bell icon will help to let you know that, hey, I'm back with a video, so you can be tuned in to watching a new video. Obviously, whenever a new starship is announced and they actually show the traits, ideally within 24 hours I will put up a video. However, if they do an announcement on a Friday or on the weekend, there's a good chance that I won't get to it until Monday morning. Just going to throw that out there to you all. If they announce on something from Friday through Sunday, it's not going to be until Monday that I will get around to covering it. Anyway, thank you all for watching, and enjoy the rest of your week.